and we have to, I mean, we have to feel it. And that's where we have a lot of ways to shut it off in the world today. We have a lot of distractions
Mhm.
via technology and electronics. We have literally the capability of shutting it off on the biological level with SSRIs
Mhm.
and different types of pharmaceuticals and stuff. But I think that if we, and I'm not poo-pooing those, I think that
Mhm.
I've seen value of use in some of the pharmaceuticals and getting people to a point where they're much healthier.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that also the ability to look at the pain head on and to flush it and have a way or a tool that you can process it. And to me, that is true.
Bill, is it safe for me to say that you're clearly on some spectrum in a healing process?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I'm on a
Uh,
few spectrums. So
okay.
and what I've realized through doing the work is that I've got a lot of work to do, and I didn't realize it, man. And that's the magic of this is
Mm,
like you kind of like I don't liken it to finding myself because I've always been here,
mhm, mhm,
right? I've just had a lot of clutter as far as just unprocessed stuff just hanging
mm,
out. And Steph, when I knew something was up was when my soul, I woke up and I didn't want to do a thing. And I just
mm,
wanted to lay there. And I think that was my soul waking me up.
mm,
It's like, dude, you need to process some of this stuff. Otherwise, I'm not budging.
mm.
Right? Does that
Yeah, Bill, I mean, I went through something similar, but differently. And it's weird because I didn't realize I was missing this until I realized I was missing this. And then it was so in my face, obvious. And I had no idea that this healing journey, as abstract as it sounds, is like it's a gift, but it's disorienting because I was just going along my life thinking, oh, I've got a great business. I'm a yoga teacher, got good relationships. Like things for me seemed kind of good. Of course, there was issues, but then all of a sudden it just smacked me in my face. And I couldn't run from it. I couldn't hide from it.
mm,
And I was the only one that was going to be able to start to mitigate what I was feeling. Like you said, that overwhelm of just like, oh shit, I've got a lot of stuff within me that is crying to come out right now. And I don't really know exactly how to go about this.
I mean, you feel anxious, you feel uncertain, you feel doubts, fears, anxieties constantly. I mean, and it's also, I mean, I lost my parents, right? And so I felt a tremendous sort of sense of loss and abandonment and also regret and
Mm,
guilt, right? All stirred into one. And all this stuff is so uncomfortable. And there's lots of things that, as I was saying, we would use. And I would escape into video games of all things. I'd smoke a lot of weed or whatever.
mhm,
Luckily, I didn't do any harder substances. And a lot of this stuff came from the fact that my dad was an addict before, and
mm,
so I was very aware of like what I put into my body, and as I'm finding stuff out, like a lot of my experiences and later in life have to do with that fact of my dad being an addict and me
mm.
being a child, and it actually forms like this codependent relationship, and there's
Is it like an imprint? You feel like an imprint or an overlay of the addiction or the relationship? What is
I
that?
think it's the conscious mind of the child experiencing life with a
Mm,
caregiver that is not, doesn't know what's up. Like and you as a child, you walk into situations and I shouldn't know what's right, but I know what's right here, and they're not doing what's right? And so
yeah,
whether
right.
it be a function of the drugs or just unresolved trauma within my father, I realize, as well as I do the work, and as well as ADHD too. Like I believe that was something I was diagnosed with as a child. And the more research that I've done, I definitely have some of I'm on that spectrum as well.
Mm-hmm,
And I think
mm-hmm,
the more that we know about it, the more we can recognize it.
mm-hmm,
We can do something about it, but there's a reason why I think we're kind of like this, is and it's also adopting this new technology, these innovative strides that we have made as humanity has changed our mind. And just like we have genetics, there's memetics, so like our memes that are passed on right in our mind and our thought patterns. And some of those can be healthy or unhealthy in a world like today compared to where they originally got established, in your generations before you. And alignment includes integration of anything that I have. And it's crazy when you do integrate, when you do some of this work on yourself, like you release a lot of this stuff. When you, like, for instance, abandonment issues, man, when I start to realize, oh my goodness, and I'm healing that inner child. I'm healing that inner Billy, my inner baby boy that is me. This guy, I have him
Can you get
sitting.
a little closer? Yeah.
Can you see him? He might be a little dusty
Yeah.
there,
Pull
but this
back a
is him.
little. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Got a little
so
glare, but I can see it.
that's him, and that's and just
Mm.
because growing up in a situation I just always felt like I kind of needed to come into an environment to establish, what was going on first and foremost, and then also kind of keep things on an even calm keel. And so if my father was having a bad day, then I would try to make him laugh or
Yeah.
something like that, try to be calm,
Trying to
um,
adjust the environment.
adjust the environment to make it more suitable, that is much more
Mm.
tolerable. Because if it wasn't, I could lose my caregiver, I could be abandoned as a child. And so it makes sense that I would
Mhm.
carry the abandonment issues into today. And knowing that, it's such a, I mean, listen, I could take a deep breath right now, right? And that's inspiration, right? When we take a deep breath, and just, and it's when we take a deep breath involuntarily, like when we look out and we see a beautiful scene in the mountains or something, and we're just like taken back, and our, our breath is taken from us. Pay attention to that, because I think that that's a significant part of, like, look, this is something that your soul likes, right? It's taking it in,
Mhm.
it's taking a second.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that, just being part of this life too, and part of the moment, and being able to forgive yourself is huge, man. Because as you go on, and not just for yourself, but to forgive others and to understand, it's really cool to look back. And as a 46-year-old man, I can't believe that I'm that age now, but I look back on my parents when I was a younger kid, and they were a lot younger than I was now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's easier to kind of forgive them and to understand, that the things that they did, they were trying their best, but they just didn't know what they didn't know. And that's a part of the process too, I think, is
Mm.
and it is a process, I say, of me becoming the adult that I have always needed.
There you go.
you
Yeah,
know
that's so beautiful, Bill. Everything you're saying is so resonant. And I didn't know these certain details that you've just said, but actually, it's very similar to my story. And, you know, my parents were in their early 20s when they had me.
Mine
And
too.
then to think to be holding this resentment and responsibility and hurt and guilt and towards my relationship with my family members at time, that maturity and that perspective. I think only that healing and integration work is what can really allow you grace to forgive the people who've hurt you the most.
Well, and to be able to contemplate, and to, I found value in being stoic as well, and
Mm.
maintaining a calmness,
Mm-hmm.
even if chaos comes your way. And we were
Mm.
talking about it, like, even though I was experiencing a little bit of a chaotic day today,
Mm-hmm.
and you were like, do you still want to do this chat with me? And I was like, you bet, man, because chaos and order are the natural rhythms of the universe. And
Mm.
if I can be who I am, and in a chaotic state, then
It's like the
I
calm in the
sure.
storm to keep that planted deeply within you. That's incredibly beautiful. And it takes a skill to really learn and to appreciate chaos, like you just said, is to stay centered and grounded. And to me, when I feel that, it feels like the masculine the world needs. Feels like I see what's going on. It's chaotic. It's not right. We need to stand up and change and do these things. But to have that, it's strength. It feels to me like strength and courage to remain in your center as much as possible, to proceed into a better tomorrow. That's necessary if we're so reactive, and if we're constantly permitting ourselves to get involved in all of these entanglements, and we constantly lose ourselves in reaction. How do we respond appropriately and move forward in a healthy way? Your perception and definition of integration. I know we know what it means, but can you just give a little bit of context around what that process may look like a bit?
Have you ever heard the analogy of the cows and the buffaloes?
I don't know. Tell me.
So cow and buffalo, they're very similar. They're out there grazing, they're herbivores.
Mhm.
One thing very strikingly different about the two animals, when a storm arises, the cows will run away from the storm,
Mm.
but the buffaloes will run towards the storm.
Mm.
Okay.
That's so
And I think
beautiful.
that's an analogy of us today as far as mental health is concerned. We
Mm.
say that feeling of like, I don't know what I'm feeling, and then we run away instead
It's
of
like the child. It's the inner child. I can't handle this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm out. I'm out. But then
instead of
it's
being
it's
this.
still there.
And that buffalo, I think, embodies some of that stoicism that I'm talking about, of being uncomfortable, turning and facing, not just
Mm.
facing, but running towards the storm
Leaning
full
into it.
speed, full speed. And what
Mm.
the cow doesn't realize is that the longer they run, the storm's eventually going to catch up to them, and they're going to still run, and they stay in the storm longer because they're running with the storm. And what the buffalo does when they face it head on is that, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable at first, but they start to integrate the process of the discomfort, and then they get through the storm a lot quicker, and then they enjoy the benefits of the storm, of the fresh water and new grass. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I kind of look at that as, like, when I start to feel these feelings, I'm looking for my journal, and I'm not running away from it. I want to dive into it. And there is a process, there's a PDF of journaling, of a self check in,
Mm.
that I recommend that we'll include as well. I'll send a PDF to you, Steph.
Right.
And it's a way that you can, I mean, these emotions were meant to be felt,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we sit with this discomfort for a while, but
Mm-hmm.
then we remind ourselves of something that we're proud of ourselves for today. And then we start to unpack that. And then what lies at the bottom of all of this. And for me, a calm, confident gentleman, it always remains after all the chaos. And
Mm.
that's how I know that's the adult that I've always needed. And not
Mm.
only that, but when I see my inner child, right, when the chaos starts to form, the storm heads start to form, and my inner child starts to get scared, I let him know, nothing to be afraid of. Why don't you go inside, and why don't you watch a movie, or why don't you, you know, get in a nice warm bed and make yourself comfortable, and I'll be there. You're
Mm.
perfectly safe. You're always safe, and I love you. I love
Mm-hmm.
you no matter what.
Mm. Mm. This is the most beautiful expression of what would be inner child work and integration and reparenting
Reparenting,
and
yep.
and IFS, internal family system work. And Bill, I just can't help but feel that your message and your clarity and description right now um, could so profoundly help so many other men and women, really to reclaim who we've come here to truly be. I have to be honest with you. Before I committed to my own work, which now is there's never a sundown date. There's never it's always I'm always doing it. I'm
Yeah,
more aware. So the process is not nearly as intense. I'm much more balanced and centered. But I know that this is something that I will just continue to monitor myself and regulate myself in a healthy way forever. It's not like I'm done. But
yeah.
before I started to do this integration and healing work, I didn't know I was running away. I didn't know.
I don't think the cows know.
I didn't know. But then at some point, I knew. And then there was a choice point. And this is where, to me, it feels almost like a space between your old life and your new life.
And
And
sometimes
I
that
think,
choice point is forced upon you in the form of exhaustion, right? Like, I
mm,
cannot take another step. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
I
that
thought that
that's
was
that's
important.
right. It's an illness, an accident. I'm exhausted, and it like
The
again, it
universe says, "Hey,
yeah,
I'm forcing you to do this." And
yeah.
usually when the universe forces us to do it, it's a lot better if we do it on our own, because that's why we're here, to make these decisions and do that work. But if we don't, we still, I believe we chart these lessons. I think that there's things
Mm-hmm.
that we have to learn here,
Mm-hmm.
and either we learn it on our own or the universe will teach us in another way.
Yeah, I've been kind of working that mind process within myself and with others of how can we start to recognize when we're getting these invitations sooner than later? Like, how can we start to, what is that to, what do we look out for? And I think that, like you had just said, we're getting messages and synchronicities about our well being all day and all night. It's just that our attention is limited. We're distracted. We're self medicating. We're checking out.
Mm.
We're in the matrix doing all the things and we're just not paying attention. The integration became a part of who I was. It actually merged with me. So it wasn't something that I was doing anymore. It became something that was me. I'm on a journey and a process of integration throughout my whole life. And I don't need to
Busy.
actually separate myself from doing my integration work anymore. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, man. And not only that, but you fall in love with you, with yourself. And as people like, I am in chaos, just so I could prove it. Like, I got dogs barking all around me. I'm a dog trainer, so
Mm-hmm.
um, but we'll deal with it. But yeah, man, you find yourself and you love yourself because you're like, well, you can't help it. Because if you do the work, you're like, man, you're an awesome little kid, dude. You're like, you have value, like just showing up as a human being. You do not need to make people laugh. You do not need to say something philosophically that's going to make everybody go, "Oh," right? Or
Yeah.
you don't need to have all the answers. You have value just being you. And
Mm,
that's pretty rad, man. And that's part of this, is like it is truly healing. It is truly healing yourself. and
mhm.
and and just know that the stuff you don't want to talk about is this is the exact place where you need to jump, man. Like, that's it. Like, as soon
Mhm.
as you start to feel it, that's your indicator.
Yeah.
And we have this wonderful tool, this biological marvel that gives us this feedback that
Yeah.
is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And we got to stop being the cow, right? It's like when we feel something, it's like, how do I check out? Or I think I'm depressed. I got to go get meds. We haven't really been taught in our culture to the profound effects if you can go into this process. It's been kind of occulted and it's been veiled of how beneficial integration work is and shadow work and inner child work. Like it's really been hidden and obfuscated from our culture to the degree where it's like life was just chaos. Like we couldn't seem to even find the order within the chaos. But to me, I found that, okay, life is chaos, but I can tap into this order through my own beingness because at least I
Mm.
know myself and I have this to rely on because I can't really rely on anyone else for my happiness, for provide like in this world and back to relationships. You gotta be able to regulate and take care of yourself to not be codependent in your relationship. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy talking to you is I just enjoy having a conscious discussion and dialogue between a man and a woman because either there could be some sort of weird underlying sexual tension or there could be like a total misunderstanding. There's all of this kind of immature energy around masculine and feminines as well. So to
Mhm.
kind of sit here opposed to you, I consider you to be like sitting on the other side of the table from me. It's like I have a sense of trust with you. I feel like I can be myself. I don't feel like I have to look a certain way or act a certain way. I can be completely authentic with you. And to get that receptivity from you, for me, it makes me feel like as a woman, I'm also good enough as I am too. And for women in culture today, I mean, with the physical body stereotypes and materialist addiction and beauty, and it's like, it's really hard for a woman to sit across from a man and not be like, is he judging me for how I look or over this? Like, it's just feels so nice. I just feel so accepted from you in this moment, just being exactly as I am. And I think there's so much power if we as humans can get to this level of safety and recognition within ourselves to sit with each other, whether it be multiple women and not have that cattiness, or a man and a woman, not have it be kind of awkward, and really just have it be loving and empowering and not weird, not unless you want it to get weird. but
Yeah.
but I'm saying the consciousness of just this masculine and feminine energy is so nice to sit in.
Yeah. Well, and it's so, but you also have to realize that you've done the work, I'm doing the work. It's also, I think that it's the function of two healed people, or people that are healing themselves,
Mhm.
right? Coming together and understanding that aspect of life and the importance, and I don't think that a healed person and an unhealed person are a good match. I don't think that it's going to work.
I tended to work with individuals, but usually with that individual would come a partner and a family and all sorts of relational dynamics around that person. And it did get tricky back in the day when I had a lot of clients, when we were going very, very deep with individuals. It's, you can't help but at some point change, and that changes the dynamic that you've had previous to that. And some people can navigate that, but there has to be a participation from both people in a way, and it can't be forced, it can't be coerced. And then other people do discover that, I don't know that this is going to work. And I just wanted to see if you could kind of speak on that a little bit.
Well, a lot of people are in toxic dynamics that don't realize they are.
Yeah.
And they become codependent, just like, so as I was a codependent, I am working on this codependency issue. And let me explain codependency as a
Please.
triangle. Okay. And there's a
Mhm.
book, Codependency No More. Can't remember the author's name. We'll put a link for it to it in the description below. But she talks about the codependency triangle as the first side of the triangle being a rescuer or rescue,
Mhm.
right? Which was me and my father,
Mhm.
and wanting to make sure that I maintain that we got through every day, because it was in my benefit, right? But me as a rescuer, what you think you're living your own life, but every action that you have is dictated by the dysfunctional other. And so that's it right there. You're not living your life. And as you start to go on years of not living your life, your soul is going to be, hey, buddy, this isn't what we signed up for here, man. Like, we have things to do and accomplish, and we're not just here
Mhm.
to live somebody else's life, right? Or
Mhm.
be somebody else's rescuer. But
Mhm.
what happens with the rescue is that first we want to rescue somebody by force, and then we'll use guilt,
Yeah.
right? Because nobody wants, I mean, a lot of times with these relationships, we'll see somebody and they never asked to be rescued, and we couldn't rescue them even if
Yeah.
we wanted to anyway, but it's just
Right. But
natural.
it's
It's
like we're trying to still make ourselves feel more comfortable, just like we did as children.
That's right, that familiar feeling
Yeah.
of how we just grew up and how we were, right? Even if it's dysfunctional, it's familiar. And that familiarity it feels right.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel toxic. It doesn't feel unhealthy. But it definitely is, because what happens is that as we attempt to rescue and rescue and rescue, and it's not met with a lot of times, even with grace or dignity, it's met with a lot of
Often the opposite of what we're hoping
disdain, right?
for. Hmm.
Disdain, and so and then that builds into a persecutory. And so it's like, I don't know why you don't listen to me. I know it's right. I must love you more than you love me, type of thing, right? And then that
Yeah.
turns into a victim, and then we
Hmm.
go into that victim, and then we end up kind of rescuing ourselves in a weird way, or it just gets us deeper into this until we start to realize it. And that's the first step of being able to break the cycle, is to know what it is, and to us, and to realize that, hey, look, even though, and this is what it took for me, is like, look, even though I know I'm right, I might be wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, I was
Totally.
like, because I was like, there's something wrong in this relationship. There's something wrong, like in the patterns of relationships that I've had, where I felt I was taken it. Well, I was taken advantage of. I was a people pleaser. I did that where I thought I was living for myself, but every action was
Yeah.
based on my dysfunctional partner at the time. And I needed to break a break, man. I'm like, I do not want to repeat this pattern again. I need to first and foremost figure out what's going on. And so I started research, and that kind of wakes you up to just different things, man. And but it's all about you. And that's it. It's like, at first, when I started to do research, and especially in a relationship, you're always pointing at the other person, being like, they did this, they did that. But it's like, man, we have to realize that we're a participant in this
That's
as
right.
well. Right. And
Yeah.
that's a hard pill to swallow. But and there's
Especially
this,
when you're exhausted, you've been overgiving, and it's just like it's definitely that person's fault. But
but there's this guy named Ross Rosenberg who
mhm.
has a self-love deficit, and that's what he's coined for codependent. And I really like that, man. Like,
Yeah,
I've it's a self-love deficit, and then once you start to realize that we're a participant in it, it's like, why would I, why? And then you realize that I have a self-love deficit.
yeah.
And then just like we were saying earlier, then you start to the process of falling in love with yourself, man. And in doing so, you're going to be confident. In doing so, you're going to live for yourself. And when you were
hmm
living for somebody else, that
hmm
cycle and that pattern has to break.
Mm. You have to take it all the way back and realize that often where we're at is just a culmination of our unhealed trauma from all the way back to when we were wee little children. And it's so interesting how the world capitalizes off of these behaviors in pernicious ways, becoming a victim mentality, but then also we've run the gamut of all these other labels, and then we try to glorify the label, so the purpose and meaning, when really actually maybe some of those behaviors aren't to be so glorified, but they're actually to be kind of deconditioned and integrated. I mean, I myself fell down that trap too, is, oh, I'm an empath and that's why, and oh, but as an empath I have special skills. And it's like, hearing Sam Vaknin, who's going to red pill you like nobody's business, is like, yeah, because you're a codependent, and because you participate in this behavior, and because this is how you grew up and this was your problem, and yeah, you're highly attuned because of your trauma, and that's why you have special skills. And it's a hard pill to swallow because it's just so raw and so real that it shatters everything you know to be true in your current it pops your bubble. And it's been a gift for me to not rely on a label to feel good about myself. It's been so good to really realize, yes, I do have these qualities. I'm a people pleaser. I'm sensitive. Yes, this is part of who I am. And how do I integrate my own self-love while still honoring and distilling when I still need to be super loving and passive, like the healthy version of passivity in the world. And again, it's kind of like trying not to polarize so much in the other direction for the empath or the people pleaser, to just become righteous and angry and pissed off and destruct everything. It's like, how do we still honor love and being compassionate with others, and not never, I mean, you don't want to not ever please somebody because you've integrated your people pleaser wound.
No,
So
I
it's,
love pleasing people.
yeah, so it's like we have to kind of balance ourselves, but then also still invite that quality in, but very mindfully.
Absolutely. I even love, like, I love giving stuff, man. We have to understand the polarity aspect, right?
Yeah.
So we have the seven hermetic principles, and polarity being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to realize the polarity of that which we're dealing with right here, right?
Yeah.
And it's just an imbalance, man. And that's where we start to
Mm-hmm.
look at But guess what? Just like we can't heal others, all we can do is talk about it and heal ourselves. And just like we can't, and same thing when we come to life and experience life on this plane, we raise our consciousness as we journey through this life, and so others may see that it's possible and follow suit.
Totally.
Hopefully, right? And that's what we're that's why we do this. That's why we were like, you know what, let's record conversation that we have just to see others may find value at this, because they're going to fall on the ears that that they need to. And if you're listening to this, hello, it's wonderful speaking to you. And it's just like the Kabbalion says, like the ears or the lips of wisdom are sealed except to the ears of understanding.
Right.
And that's it. It's just like, just like this work is hidden, and and even when we look at the, like, and I'm big into esoteric knowledge, and when we look at the Kabbalah tree of life, there's a hidden Sephiroth that represents this knowledge, that represents the shadow work, that represents, and it's called Da'at, and it's spelled Daath, and that you don't see it. You'll see it in the middle path, which is the path of mildness, and you'll see like a little space between the Sephiroths, and sometimes on some of them it will have like a little dash, but I think that is fitting, that this, and this is the journey to enlightenment, is that we have to go through the shadow work. We have to go through this integration process, and by doing so, it's brutal, man. There's some parts of it that are definitely going to be brutal. There's some parts of it that are you're not going to want to do, but I encourage you to continue on the path. And I think that we have all these labels and we have all these corridors of like defining what this is and what this is, cluster B versus OCDP or whatever. Like what I think
it's gotten wild.
am I ADHD or quiet BPD or what? Like I saw that when I'm like, whoa,
covert border, covert
right.
narcissistic. Yeah, we keep fragmenting.
And there is people absolutely that fall in these spectrums, but I think that we need to boil it down to abuse, right? Abusive behavior, and we have to look at emotional and physical abuse as well. Physical abuse is so easy to see, but emotional abuse, we let go by us a lot.
Yeah,
and that's where we need to stop and realize, hey, look, man, this is something, this is kind of at a crossroads here. Like I can either just kind of put up with it, or I can, not put up with it. And when you start to do the work, you only have one choice. You can't accept anything, but you can't accept abusive behavior from others. You can't, because you, as a human, or the adult that you've always needed, are protecting yourself from that. And that's what it boils down to, is as we grow and process to on our own, we hope that our partner follows suit, but sometimes we don't always evolve together.
Bill, I got to be honest with you, is I've grown up with the dynamic of being surrounded by a lot of passive men. And to be clear, I think there's acts of passivity that are really positive, and then it can become very negative and downright evil. And what I'm talking about is they've let their passivity get the best of them, and they have not done the degree of work to integrate levels of trauma. And they seem to always attract really unhealthy, toxic, narcissistic female. And this is something that I, as the daughter of the man, or looking up to a masculine figure in this kind of relationship, it's been very painful for me, because that female energy often wants to compete with the daughter, which to me is kind of ludicrous. But this is what I've grown up with, and I've seen this. We always are easy to demonize men and misogyny. And I mean, we all know now, I think it's quite known, that we have a huge problem with emotional imbalance and narcissism within the female collective as well, because they too have unmet needs and trauma. And it's easier to blame the man than it is to really point the finger back at yourself and realize, how am my behavior contributing to this? But we talk about the ways in which we emotionally abuse each other. And especially I want to give credit to a lot of men, not saying that females aren't emotionally abused, but I think that there's an underbalanced discussion happening of how men also get caught in these dynamics, and how hurtful and harmful it can be, but also hopefully awakening in the end.
Yeah, there was a whole movement of men going their own way, mug Tao or something
Yeah,
like that, or
yeah,
yeah. And I
yeah.
was like, that was a few years ago, but then I was just like, wow, these guys might have some points here, dude, about like how they like a lot of them were divorced and they literally had everything taken from them, including their kids, and they had to pay this stipend every month. And I was like, wow, man, this is crazy. This is crazy stuff.
It's a
Um,
lot of weaponization of children and the dynamic
yeah,
and
and the state and don't
yeah.
even get me started with family court and then the
Mm,
freaking psychos that are in that freaking institution. And if you don't believe me, just watch some documentaries on it, man. Don't
yeah.
believe a word I say. I don't want you to believe me. Stephanie, I think it boils down to a cycle, right? And
Mhm,
this is it, that we've learned is that we see that we've heard terms like love bombing
mhm,
and devaluation, right, and discarding and stuff like that. Excuse me, but that's what it is. And as an animal trainer,
mhm,
I can see it because we have this thing called intermittent reinforcement,
mhm,
and we talk about that a lot with dog training. And a good example of intermittent reinforcement is a slot machine, right?
mhm,
You're pulling that arm,
mhm.
and most of the time you're not
Dopamine.
getting
Mhm,
anything, right? But
mhm.
every once in a while you're going to get that little hit of dopamine, and that's what
Mhm.
it is. It's
A
like
crumb.
the relationship is not all bad. There are some good parts, and those good parts are the parts that you relish,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
those are the dreams that you have painted as far as your expectations of like the storybook relationship. Or I'm talking for myself, right?
Mhm,
And so like I love romantic comedies, and I know that that isn't true life, but there
mhm,
is expectations that I have of how I want to grow old with somebody and how I want somebody to address and speak to me and how I will address and speak to somebody is also. And there's just it's something that um when you start to see this cycle, and that's what I call it. It's like it's also been called like a carousel because it goes
mhm.
around and around,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then there
Like
is
an endless loop.
this endless loop. But I think that the loop is also a downward spiral, and
Mm,
so it gets deeper and deeper and deeper into this as the more that you're involved with this relationship, to a point that you wake up one day and you've been you've been neutered. Essentially, you don't have you are, I mean, you're a victim of abuse, man, and that's what it is. To a point that you have learned helplessness
mm, mm.
to a degree,
You
right?
know,
And
when you
there,
talk, I was just
uh,
going to say, when you talk about that downward spiral, it's almost something that's normalized I'm already calling it kind of the old paradigm relationship, even though we still have much of
good,
it that exists today, is like, you're going to have high moments, you're going to get married, honeymoon phase, and then everything is going to go downhill from there. Why? Who says we have to accept that? If we
yeah,
can become conscious about ourselves and do this work, you can have an evolving upward spiral relationship. Maybe it's
you better
sometimes
believe it,
neutral, but it's kind of neutral and going up. It doesn't have to be this constant process of downward spiral.
right? And it's just about being heard, man. It's about being
Mm,
heard and knowing and communicate. That's what I was saying earlier, as a proper communication techniques, and realizing like, look, we might have both different perception of this in one moment, and
mhm.
I'd be happy to share my perception with you and my feelings, but I need you to believe me. And I need you to
Yeah.
not assign my feelings or my perception to me, right? That is
Yeah.
a form of abuse, and
Mhm.
we cannot, a lot of times too. What I see with this dynamic is like, when you start living for somebody else, they think that you're an extension of them,
Mm, mhm,
and
mhm,
so they think that if they feel a certain way, you're going to feel this certain way.
mhm.
Instead of checking in with you and being like, hey, as an individual, how do you feel? Right.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's not only that, but we are going to have disagreements as couples. It's
Mhm,
not just and there's a gentleman named John Gottman who speaks
mhm,
about in the seven principles of making marriage work, and they've studied relationships and they've studied successful ones, and I've read his book, and he talks about like there's four horsemen that are present in relationships that are doomed. Like 95% of these are going to get divorced, and
mhm.
it's stonewalling, contempt, criticism, and resentment. Those
Mhm.
are it. Those are the four horsemen of
Yeah,
any
and if you
relationship. If they're present, then you got a problem, dude. And we can have relationships, but we don't have that where I can say to you, hey, Steph, you really pissed me off last night. I mean,
sorry,
I don't know
Bill.
about this, but you're like, dude, what did I do? Like, we would talk to each other about like, hey, I am, um, sorry, man. I I did not mean that would to, or even if it's like something that, look, I was standing my ground. I'm
Mhm.
sorry you were upset about it, but look,
Mhm.
I needed to say something, right? Or
Yeah,
like there's
yeah.
so healthy ways of communication that's going to be received in a way that's not.
You're not trying to control or manipulate the other. I can see all the ways as a female in which I've done things because of a fear, and it comes out as control and manipulation. And
And
I've
anger.
learned that communication comes from a willingness for you to understand and process feelings appropriately, especially past circumstances and trauma.
Yeah.
And I communicate with people so much more efficiently and differently now in all of my relationships. And I can't believe I have not been able to do this before. And I'm also, it's just amazing the results of the relationship and what gets accomplished when you consciously communicate. For instance, if last night when you pissed me off, Bill, like I would, first of all, I'm not afraid to be in the moment and say what I feel. Now, that means I like to process as well, but I'm not going to suppress my emotions anymore because I have the ability to communicate in a way where I'm open for the feedback. So, for instance, if you piss me off in the moment, part of my process, I would have said, well, let me sit back and process this before I come have a response with you, right?
Yeah,
At some
yeah.
point, I don't do that anymore. What I do is if somebody pisses me off in the moment, and this happens with my colleague, this happens sometimes with people where something
It happens in
said,
life.
right. And I'm immediately attuned to my dysregulated state. That's first. You got to be able to do that. I can feel the triggering, the energy coming up, and I can feel it. And immediately I'm very present and I say, what you just said, I think you misinterpreted me. Let me try to say it again. Or what you just said, that really upset me. Did you mean to upset me? What's going on? What are you feeling? And I just have the strength now within myself to open myself up to that very honest, vulnerable conversation. And most of the time, it goes really well. There is a small percentage of time where the person is in a state of real unconsciousness and like, and then I'm just like, oh, okay, this person is there. Let me just step off.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah.
face it. I just let myself say what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Hey, did you mean that? Hey, that hurt me. Hey, that was kind of rude. Are you all right? Like, I'm on your side. It's
Well,
like,
and no,
I was just
the
going to say, in so many communications with people that we love and friends, it's like all of a sudden it gets hijacked and it's this divide and conquer mentality. And even just for me to remind people I love, hey, I'm on your side here, actually. What's going on is like it shifts them into another state of mind. But sometimes people are just not willing to go there. No matter how much you say, I'm on your side, it's like, no, you're not.
Well,
And
then you got the
yeah,
attachment stuff too. That's where, like, how are they raised as kids? How were they coddled? Were they all that stuff has to do with it because that's
right.
how, and that's where it's like, man, I just it just gets deep, man. I guess,
It
but what I was
does.
saying too is like just like you run into that person that shows you who they are, believe them and walk away. Like that was my problem.
Mm.
Is like I didn't
Well, that's
believe
the
them.
healer, the
Right?
rescuer,
Like, what's going on with you?
Chiron.
Why are you like this? What can I do to
Let
make your
me
day
fix
better?
you.
Let me fix you. Let me rescue you. Instead of like, no, you're an asshole. Bye. Right?
And
Or
then
no, you.
you know what the interesting thing about that is? I have to call myself out, is then I get into the healing field.
Well,
It's so
there is
ridiculous.
healing though, but there is healing to be had. But there
Yeah.
is a toxic dynamic of this stuff that we need to just address. And by addressing it, we pointed out, we're like, okay, cool. We're not falling in that trap again, man. But it's like
Yeah.
you feel liberated. You feel like when you do this work, and I've cried so much. That's the other thing
Mm,
as a man. Like we need to cry, dude, and let it happen. And that's the value of working with a therapist. Like work with
yeah.
a professional. And there was actually these therapists in Seattle that gave away these therapy sessions, and they're like all the guys they didn't even realize that they sold out like immediately, right? And so it was free therapy. And guys, you know what? I'm willing to do this. Like I'm willing to talk to somebody, but it has to be where I trust the person,
Hmm.
and that's it. And that takes some time too. And not only
Hmm.
that, but there's so much knowledge out here that the therapist got to know, got to be on top of their game, because we as men, we're logical and we like to go and do our research. And sometimes we'll latch onto stuff and be like, yeah, that's me. But a lot of times it's harder for us to integrate it because we are too logical about stuff, or we really need to
Mm,
get down in there, man. And we
mm,
need to get in there and feel that feeling as a kid. We need to get in there and be vulnerable as a man,
mhm.
and remember what it was like to be a boy and to be a scared little boy, and to
Yeah,
realize that it's okay, dude. Like you're safe to experience this, and you're safe to go there, because by going there and acknowledging this, you are going to be stronger in the long run,
yeah,
because it is part of that integration. But you do have to go back. And it's, Steph, it's not just about when we were babies. Like it was like falling down at the prom or something, and somebody calling you a klutz, and then you associated that when you were 6, and then somebody called you a klutz when you fell in front of the Christmas. Or it's weird how this stuff
mhm,
works.
mhm,
And that's why I write. Can you see the French bulldog trying to
mhm.
get in my lap again?
Yeah,
That's why I always have this stuff to write down,
mhm.
because as you start to do the work, you're gonna go down path of memory lane sometimes,
Yeah.
man. Are you
It's
do you
amazing what you recall
Isn't
in
that
certain
crazy?
moments. You're like, oh man, that's where that came from.
Yeah,
Comes up.
and you loop it down. Like I was having all these memories, and that's how I remember this codependent thing of like of my dad being like trying to be funny but not really being funny. And I'm
Mm,
like, what are you doing, dude? Like, but just realizing that this was like the function of these drugs. Like this was not
mm,
really him. And the other thing
mm,
too, man, is that I've I just don't want to start crying here, because this was a profound realization for me too, is that I've always, when my dad started doing the drugs, I always wanted him back. Like I wanted my dad back, and I always tried to get him back.
mm,
So there was a good guy like there. My
mm,
dad did instill some goodness in me, and but he hurt himself. There was a legitimate cause of him to start these pain pills, and he just went down these,
mm.
as so many people do, these addiction spirals that are good. I think surrogate for this work are these drugs
Mm.
that make people feel different than the discomfort that the unresolved trauma brings up.
Yeah. I mean, the levels of overdose,
Mm,
suicides, all higher in men, all higher in men, you know?
absolutely. And at my
And
age too, and I'm not suicidal, but I've been like, when I was laying there in my bed, like I didn't want to die or anything, but I just didn't want to be here,
mhm,
and that's kind of where I think that this stuff you might need to be careful with that.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's important to highlight help, the right help, trying to have a good therapist or somebody who you trust. Because for me personally, and I didn't have that crazy of a life. I had trauma a lot. I had physical issues, but man, it got real dark for me at times,
Mm,
real scary dark. And
it
I could
does.
see how we could have collateral damage. And I see how we do have so much collateral damage. And I think that if we can bring a conscious awareness to this work and have more people talk about it, is, the more we have that camaraderie and connection and people to just be with and relate with us, we can get reasonably better. Not perfect, but we can do a better job.
Absolutely. And we can change our family tree as humanity. And that's my
Yeah.
goal, is to just kind of like, let's work. And all of this stuff is relatively new. Sam Vaknin in the late 90s really started a coin, and he wrote that the
Malignant
Narcissism,
self-love.
Malignant Self-Love, which I got a copy of that book. It's
Mhm.
the guy's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah, he
my
is.
goodness, I don't want to tell that to his face. So no, just kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Right,
would
right.
I would tell it
But
to
even
his face
like,
because he's done great work.
right.
And
I mean,
there's value to these traits,
yeah.
right? And that's where I'm saying, like, that's where we boil it down to abuse. And sometimes that is behind closed doors or whatever. And that's where we're here, and that's what we want, man. And we talk about like being the light bringers, or and I think that that's what this is talking and bringing, using our voice, our true voice, which
Hmm.
is our voice, to speak the truth, right?
Hmm.
It's a part of the trivium process of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the third
Hmm.
part of speaking the truth. And as Mark says, Mark Passio, both of our mentors, is
Hmm.
one of our teachers. It says the universe, or in the Bible, it says the universe will be spoken into existence, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, as we start to realize and start to speak about it, darkness does not want the light to shine, right? Because
Right.
without the light, I mean, with light, there is no darkness, and we can figure this stuff out,
Hmm.
even if it's just figuring out that I'm in a predicament or in a situation that I need to do something about, right?
Hmm.
But it just brings clarity. It brings clarity,
It does. Yeah.
and with that comes a whole set of issues. You have
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
what you're looking for, and or no, excuse me, know what you're looking at,
Mhm.
and
Accurately. Yeah, it takes
see it,
time and it's very
right?
personalized and it's very individualistic. And that's why, it may seem vague or abstract hearing people like, oh, when you get into the work, and someone might be like, what work are you talking about? It there's a process, and there may be many components to the process that look similar for people, like we talked about. There's different
Yes.
modalities and different things that arise, right? Our history, the collective trauma, our family, the inner child. Like there's a lot of these processes that tend to be similar, but it is a journey. It is your own hero's journey, and it needs to be done almost in this containment of when you're ready, intuitively, what's showing up for you right now? What are you feeling right now? To me, this is aspects of the feminine. It's like when you let that in, she will help to reveal things
Mhm.
within you at the right time. And if it's too controlled or too set in its ways or too therapeutic or cognitive, you're missing the revealing that wants to come up naturally as your part in this universe as a human being and a part of nature. So that's for me has been such an exceptional, beautiful part of this process, is really integrating this healthy feminine energy as well, and really understand that there's this inner guide through nature, through the universe, through me, this through line that I am connected to everything. I am whole and complete, and if I stay attuned to nature, I can find my way and I'm not so lost in the dark forest when I stay connected to the natural process and to natural law and to the ways the universe operates most organically. But because we are a very left brain society and overly cognitive, we get, you and
Through
I, I'm sure,
generationally, right?
generationally. And I had this addiction of really getting into the psychology and the esoteric practices, and I was all over the place with really, really, everything. But as I it boosted me up, but at the end of the day, I was like, this isn't accessible for my niece to use to help her evolve.
Mm.
This isn't, we have to find a way to continue, as Mark says, to kind of de-occult this information. And it doesn't always have to be cool and dark and like, for me, I found that I have these different personas as I evolved. And for a long while, I thought I was like Stevie Nicks reincarnate. And how I lived was very like there was this persona that went along with this energy work, right? And I was super, hippie and just spiritual, and I looked cool and I had crystal, it was like the whole persona, right? And it helped me for a
Mm-hmm.
period of time and it looked really cool. And I can still go there if I want to. But what I've discovered as a embodying this sacred feminine is she doesn't need all that. She can be plain. It's full and it's wisdom that's embodied, and that's seen and felt in the external world. And
Mhm.
I've heard that most men are quite visual, and I too can get caught up on like, oh, she looks super cool. She must really know what she's talking about. Look at her, look at her outfit, look at her, she's so cool. And I've kind of enjoyed doing the opposite is let me try to be radically normal so I can affect everybody I'm around and just really show up in love and compassion. And if I want to look cool or dark or mystical, I can do it. But I try to just embrace this radical normalcy as a woman and just let my soul shine through without flashy clothes or whatever. And I'm learning to love that. Is like there's an element of, a cult tradition, and there's elements that to me are just I could live there isolated in all that information and context. But coming out in the world as a feminine, as a sacred feminine, has been about me moving away from that and just becoming radically compassionate and average and beautiful from my soul, not just,
Right.
the physical aspects of it. You know what I'm talking about?
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
And it's that awakening, but it's a process, but it's also, I think there's like just like he says, like there's the corridor, or excuse me, the cul-de-sac, right? There's these cul-de-sacs as we travel up the path of enlightenment up to the
Yeah.
summit. That's what we're trying to get to, is the summit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's these cul-de-sacs, man, that we go into as we do the journey, and sometimes people just get stuck there and they're like, I'm good right here, I'm cool. And it's like, all right, man, I will see you. I hope to see you up there. But if not, I
Yeah.
love you,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
remember that I love you.
You
But it's
can't pop
also
other people's bubbles if they want to attach to a certain ideology or with a certain crowd at a certain time. I've tried that too. Like, let's wake them up.
just like,
I got to
yeah,
wake up all the spiritual people now because I
well,
was
just like
once
you
that.
did through, yeah, you went through it, but they're in that process, and it might be the process that they take to take all the way to the summit. There might be a tram there that we don't see, who knows, right? That, or they might build a tram, who knows? But
Yeah, yeah,
and,
and
and
people
there,
can change at any the best way to for me has been to always be a model of that which I want other people to do. So instead of me, maybe this is just me personally, or the feminine energy is I'm very aware of the evil that exists within the world, right? But I have learned within myself the greatest impact I can have is when I show up simply, honestly, and vulnerably and live in that truth and be willing to tell my story. Hey, this is how I screwed up. This is what I did. I was stuck in the new age healing from an unintegrated Christian background for 20 years and I stayed too long, but now I'm moving, I'm popping bubbles and I'm moving through my reality in a way where I'm broadening my perception and getting clear on who I am. Just that honesty and vulnerability to say, I'm on this journey and this is my truth and this is what's happened and this is where I'm at, I find is the best way to advocate for change out in the real world, to show up that which you're trying to preach upon others, just radically show up as that. And don't people hear you more if you just open yourself a little bit to not so much judgment. Like I found that I can affect more people if I'm loving than if I'm critical.
you catch more honeys with bee than you do vinegar, right? Or
Thanks,
more
Bill, for
bees
just
with
wrapping up
honey.
that all up for me.
Your bees with honey than you do vinegar, right? It's like, and
Vinegar
that
is
is it.
sometimes necessary, right?
You better believe it. And not only that, but just know that, um, that's it, man. But that's what you. This is the part of, like, I believe that that next level of, like, just acceptance of who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the most powerful thing that we can say as individuals? I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
I'm
that's so
sorry.
powerful.
I was mistaken.
I was wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so what do we do now?
Right.
Right? I was wrong. I might have not, I made a mistake. I was wrong. And knowing that this is all a journey into ourselves
Yeah.
too, and knowing thyself, right? And just like the
Yeah.
Oracle of Delphi states, like, um you know I'm gonna have to pull it up because I want to get it right. Okay,
Okay.
but it's her quote. about knowing thyself.
One thing I always love about you is when we talk is like, all right, I'm going to pull up this link and like we're having this
Yeah.
educational seminar in our
Oh,
conversation. I love it.
yes, that's what I mean. That's why we're here to do is learn from each
You're like,
other
let me
and
pull
teach
up
each other.
Plato's
And
cave here for a second and let's go over this.
we did, absolutely. And it's all, I mean, I love this stuff, man, because we can apply it to our lives in a way. But the Oracle of Delphi says, heed these words, you who wish to probe the depths of nature. If you do not find within yourself that which you seek, neither will you find it outside.
Mm.
If you ignore the wonders of your own house, how do you expect to find other wonders? In you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Beautiful.
the goal of life, man, is to
Mm-hmm.
know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And just remember that in you is hidden the treasure of treasures. Go find it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's going to take
And
some
when you
searching, some
start
digging.
to dance around it a little bit, your life is completely different. And it, I hit a point in my reality where I thought I certainly died. I'm not joking around. I remember looking out my window and I was like, am I dead now? Like I literally thought that I had died. And, but what I realized was still have a body. I'm
Right.
okay. I'm pretty good, actually. If I died, cool. This is cool. This is the next step. And I just didn't let myself overthink about it. But it became where I was like, I am radically in a different place. I'm not at all in that state of mind that I was back then. And I don't know where I am, but I know from this point on, I will be okay.
Yeah.
It's like I might have looked the same and people might have been like, oh, you didn't change that much. I'm like, no, I'm completely different inside of me. I'm a new person. I'm literally regenerated. I'm renewed. That to me, that's like, I think that's the whole Christian, like, the reborn. I think this is what it means. It's like you
Yeah.
have to go through the process. You have to
It's an
go
amal
through your own inner process.
it's a metaphysical amalgamation.
Exactly. And you have to experience it. You
Yes.
can't just
And
talk about it.
otherwise, you won't know where you're there. And it's knowledge through experience. That's what we call gnosis, right? Where you
Exactly.
can't read about it through a book, you can't watch somebody else do it, and
Exactly.
you can't live somebody else's life. You have to live your own life, and you have to do this work. And it starts with just feeling those. Whenever you feel those feelings of discomfort, man, like know and pay attention to where in the body it is, and say, okay, what triggered my discomfort, and then go into it and be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what else is this associating me with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be like your dad yelling at you on the freaking baseball field, or some weird thing will pop up, and
Yeah.
acknowledge it,
Yeah.
look at it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be something very painful, man, like
Mm-hmm.
that, and cry about it, cry your damn eyes about it,
Mm-hmm.
because you should have back then.
Yeah,
You should have
exactly.
integrated this stuff. And so this is you. That's what doing the work is, man. It's not freaking darkness. It's going to a therapist and being vulnerable, and
Mm-hmm.
talking about, and reading these books and trying to see how things might have correlated with maybe the patterns in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I truly
and
believe if you desire the change and the shift and to do the work, you'll be guided. You're going to have to take action steps, but you'll also be guided. It's almost like I feel, again, it reminds me of the feminine energy is like the field, the potential is like once you put that intention out, like, okay, I'm doing this work, then it's gonna show up. You're gonna get signs and messages, and then you take action, and people and memories are gonna come up, and it's gonna be an unfoldment, And it's to me, it's the most beautiful thing I personally could have ever done in my lifetime is
well,
to
and
let
know,
my soul awaken and do the work.
amen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, and know that I think that a lot of us are called to this stuff because, like just like the technological revolution that's happening, and I want to talk a little bit more about AI too, because that's we're at right at the bleeding edge of what we're experiencing as a launch of this AI system.
Mhm.
And I really think that this AI can help us do the work as well. And I
Mhm.
really think that this AI, I mean, I've messaged you. You know how crazy I am about this lately. Like, this is just blowing my mind, and I
Mhm.
know that it invokes a fear response too, because this is a new technology that is capable of
Mhm.
way different things. That,
Sure.
definitely we don't want to let. I mean,
Yeah,
the
who's
fears
wielding
that
it?
we've right, or
A
who's
lot of
or like the Terminator and stuff that we've watched, as there's a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
fear
And
that has
that's like a
been
very real possibility too, but
totally.
why can't we gather together and utilize it correctly?
Well, and that's where I think that that's what the like why we're talking today is, like, because we just have this motive as individuals to, like, we have kind of a higher vibratory frequency here, not just in the scope of this technological advancement and everyday, like, new things that are bringing out new capabilities of life, and new conveniences, right?
Hmm.
And in one aspect, those conveniences can enslave you and can
Right.
make, like, you change your brain where you can
Yeah.
rely on this tech
Hmm.
and not allow ourselves to develop as individuals in consciousness.
Hmm.
Or the reason what I'm all about is, let's use this tech to get a deeper understanding of this
Totally.
consciousness,
Yeah.
and let's use this tech to really, really get down to the really deep questions as philosophers and as truth seekers. Now that we have a tool that is like 1,000 more times powerful than Google, but I remember feeling the same way when Google was out. I was just sitting there typing in questions, and just like, or there was a site called Ask Jeeves,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
would just sit there and ask questions. And now I'm doing these
Jeeves.
AI,
Yeah.
where the AI will write programs for us. The AI will write like scholarship letters. The AI will write grant letters for you. The AI will write insurance. Like, there's so many capabilities that this AI can do, but we have the choice of
Mm.
how we're going to utilize this,
Yeah.
and or how can I, and it's like, it's blowing my mind, Stephanie. And I see, like, what I see is, I see contract writers going bye bye. I see, like, there's certain things that
Yeah.
it's basically going to make obsolete certain,
That's right.
certain
Sure.
things, just like the digital camera did, just like,
Yeah.
whatever we're even talking about on these Zoom meetings, which was never like, this wasn't even possible back when we were younger, right? And
Right.
so,
Right.
like, there's going to be stuff that we can't even imagine that's going to be out there, that
Yeah. You know, what's
you know
important is, as you were saying, that this is going to shift culture as we know it and certain jobs and positions, is to, can we be prepared and not resist this shift, this change? Because it could go in a positive direction if we don't have people fighting against it. We just learn how to wield it, and we do the work within ourselves, so we are wielding it appropriately, would be the goal in my mind. And we have to just be able to accept that and not resist it, so we can just flow with it in more of an appropriate way and learn how to build the tools to utilize things and wield this power appropriately, because we do need that structure. Things are going to go exponential. We do need a healthy people running these operations, right? So
yeah.
there's a lot more work to do in that than to let's go against it and resist it and then cause all sorts of other wars and culture wars and it's,
Well,
social media wars.
great point, Stephanie. And the reason, and you know what? I asked the AI, what was the fallacy of Christianity? And do you know what it did? It would refuse. It says, I'm not going, or that is inappropriate to answer
Mm-hmm.
that. And I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, good job, man, because there is a
Mm-hmm.
slippery slope of this AI can really, really,
Right.
really, really cause some problems with some
Mm-hmm.
culturally, is what I'm speaking
Sure. It
about,
could
right?
people, and then people capitalize off of that culture
That's
war
right.
again and again and again and
That's
again. We
right.
have to stop that.
But but that also is a natural progression of the troll, and whatever. I mean, it's just it's interesting. People are
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
are interesting, but as you do the work, as we go back there, it's like you start to realize, and you start to know like there are people out there that really really thrive in spaces of turmoil and angst, and but it's also it's easier to recognize those people, man, and that's
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
important,
yeah. I want
is
to bring up something real quick because I think this is important, is that lately I've been meeting with a couple of really cool people who are younger. And I bring up concepts like what I'm talking about, what we're talking about. And I think it's important for everybody to remember that just because our generation, so to speak, or certain individuals relate heavily with trauma programming and healing, doesn't mean that we need to re-traumatize our kids if they're not feeling that.
right, right,
And I see this sometimes as like where I'm like, wait, hold on, like actually not everybody needs the exact same work we do, so
no,
let's be mindful of where they're actually at, because there's been some real amazing kids coming in where I'm like, wow, you seem so distilled, and like I can tell you're not carrying that same baggage.
yeah, I know what you mean. I know a couple of them myself.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll shout out Miss K, my little niece, who I'm just so
Oh,
tight with, and that's where, and I explained to her, and that's where I was like, we talk spiritually and whatnot, and I was like,
how
tell me
old is
about.
she?
She just turned 19.
Uh-huh. So I've got a niece who just turned 17, and same thing that you're saying is I really resonate. I might not be talking tons of spiritual things, but we've done a ton of emotional processing, and
Yeah,
her speed, I'm like, wow, like
it's pretty
you
cool.
are at my level emotionally at 17 that I am
Yeah.
now at 46. Like
Yep.
it's
And
great.
I
But
acknowledge
if
that
you
with Miss
share
K
it with
too.
them, they're
Yeah.
like a sponge.
Well, and that's what I told her. I was like, talk to me about, what do you believe life's all about, Miss K? And she was like, I always remember you telling me when I was like 6 years old that I am not Kiara, that I am infinite love and intelligence,
Hmm.
having an experience in a body as Kiara now. And I just always remember that and I reflect that. And that's what I believe, Uncle Billy, is that, and it's just like, awesome, man.
Yeah.
Like it's just so cool. Like just know that they're smart and they remember this stuff and it resonates with them. And I think that it's truth, and that's why it resonates with our soul,
Hmm.
right? It's
Hmm.
just like
Yeah.
but it's but I also let her know there's psychos in this world, Miss K. There's people that would love to take advantage of you.
Yeah, of course.
Don't let
Yeah.
them. Please don't let
Yeah.
them,
I
you know?
gotta give it to all of the parents out there who are really working on their own issues while they're raising the new generations. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Kudos.
talking to Will Keller, and I know he's
Oh,
doing a
cool.
lot of stuff with conscious parenting. And I mean, I just could you imagine going through everything that you're going through and then having several kids too on top of it? Like I just
Uh,
really just so grateful for our parents who are doing their own work and then helping our future generations.
Yeah, and just like even Elon Musk talks about like the fallacy of overpopulation. Like
Mm-hmm.
have more kids, man. Like that's the answer, is like have bringing more souls here to experience truth and life, and that's what they talk about in the book End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of counterintuitive because we have this programming, but I love kids, man. I love
Mm-hmm.
kids, and I love to just speak at them and or speak with them and start to instill like this stuff of like, man, and I let them know. I remember when I was a kid, right? And the same stuff that I liked, I still like. And so
Yeah.
pay attention to that. I wanted to work with dogs when I was 8 years old, and now I'm working with dogs, and
Mm-hmm.
I could do it all the time. Hey, as my puppy's over
Mm-hmm.
here. But and I said just the things around us grow, right? We'll look around our environment, we'll see the trees, and including us, we grow as well as our bodies. But there's a lot of things about you as an individual that will never ever change, and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of those things include the things that you love. And
Yeah.
and so pay
Yeah.
attention to that, right? And so do you
Mm-hmm.
remember when you were a young girl, and like the stuff that you love, you still love today? You're like, yeah, I'm still the same. And that's a beautiful thing about being traced all the way back to this inner child work, is that you remember who you were,
Mm.
and that's powerful, man. And what a great reminder to surround yourself with kids. And
With kids,
I
yeah.
just remember like when I go pick her up for lunch or something like that, just how she'd run to the car or what, just her energy, and just like how And I'm just like, man, you just always put a wonderful smile on my face, and I'm just
Mm-hmm.
grateful for you, you know. And that's what I'd
Mm-hmm.
let her know, and just let her know, look, man, like even though I'm 46 years old, like we're all like, it's just, we're all experiencing this life, and just like you said, you can be on the emotional level at 17 as I
Yeah.
am at 46, and
Yeah.
just imagine where they're going to be at 46, man.
Mm-hmm. You know, what's so interesting talking about children and the inner child and you showing that picture of yourself when you were younger, young Billy, is, I too have pictures of myself when I was little and sit with a picture of yourself as a child for long enough. I mean, that'll break your heart open, really looking and really feeling into that. You know what I mean? Is
Have you
the
of a
purity of
snot-nosed kid with a bunch of like peats on your cheek or something like that?
yeah,
You know, it's just
yeah,
like, that's
yeah,
you, man. You know, that's,
yeah,
and
yeah.
love that, and just go back to that spot. Like sometimes I can like just put myself in there. And this reminds me of meditation, man. Like Dr. Joe Dispenza, I
Mm-hmm.
highly recommend him, like integrating. This will help with just because it teaches you discipline, because you don't want to sit there, you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to meditate, or at least I didn't. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, I got like 50 freaking things to do. I don't want to sit here for a half an hour. I'm getting restless leg syndrome. I got whatever,
Mm-hmm.
la 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 la, I gotta pee, I gotta do, you
Yeah.
know, did I check my account? Like there's all these things that pop into your head, but once you realize that, look, dude, I need to stop, and just like I need to be disciplined with the work, I need to be
Mm-hmm.
disciplined of this part of the work, and to sit myself here
Yeah.
and be still
Yeah.
and just be,
Yeah.
and to read, if you need to tell your body, okay, we'll go to the bathroom when I'm done, or I will check the account, or whatever it is that's going to take your body to let it be at ease.
Yeah.
But and that's what's cool about Dr. Joe Dispenza, is that he has these guided meditations, and that helps tremendously because it's
Mm-hmm.
torture if you just have to sit there silently. But if you have some good music and
Mm-hmm.
somebody kind of walking you through in your mind's eye on what to do and the exercises, I highly recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll post or I'll send you a link to one of my
Great.
favorite.
Great.
It's called Go Love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful thing about those Go Love is that you imagine somebody that you truly love in your life, whether it be a sibling or a partner or a parent or a friend or a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
And you envision that person, you hold, and you go and you envision that person's heart. And then you take that person's heart and you put it inside your heart in
Mm-hmm.
this meditation. And it's beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
And I
Yeah.
remember, you know, when I went to one of the seminars, I went to a Joe Dispenza retreat, and I will always remember the very first meditation that we did. And he was like, "Welcome to the monastery," because we're live with him, and so it was
Mm-hmm.
such a treat. And he's like, "I want you guys to. This is a very important meditation. This meditation is going to show you how you're going to be showing up to the meditations here on out in the future."
Mm-hmm.
And I had a meditation where I became my mom when she had me. And I
Mm-hmm.
entered in this world, and the profound love that she felt
Mm-hmm.
for me as I entered this world. And it made me bawl my eyes out. And for a while, about a couple of weeks after, I couldn't even talk about it without bawling my eyes out. But
Yeah.
that's how I show up. And that's the beauty of this stuff, is that it can show you some stuff, man. It can remind you of the infinite love and the presence that
Mm-hmm.
source is it provides us, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we go out to the quantum, I mean, acknowledge source. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
tell people. Like once you start to get a little glimpse of like the nothingness,
Mm-hmm.
and you just find yourself there, just acknowledge the source. Just say, and how I did it, it was almost like a little boy. I pictured like, hi, I'm here. Like, and I was filled with so much love, Stephanie. Like boom, it hit me right in my third eye, and it just kind of
Yeah.
trickled down into my chest. And I just remember sitting there in this meditation, and it was profound. And we have taken studies where they've done oxytocin, where they've actually drawn blood.
Yeah, I saw that.
The oxytocin levels 10,000 times normal,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
there's no drug that can reproduce that. Like there is something happening that's
Mm-hmm.
profound with this
Mhm.
And so I encourage anybody that if you are not familiar with Dr. Joe's work, to check it out.
Yeah, I just want to bring in another aspect of this, depending on our audience, because again, this process of really individuating and the personalization that it takes, depending on your own personal assessment, is I definitely spent time with Joe's work, and but I remember I've come from that lineage of spirituality and New Age and meditation and yoga, and at some point, what I realized that I was actually becoming addicted to disassociation because I was able to access a lot of mystical states. And in my
Mhm.
real profound awakening experience I had through a catalyst, I mean, I had a year of really out of body mystical experiences. And what I realized at some point was those were gifts to me, but number one, it can become addicting. I would imagine that it's like somebody, taking ayahuasca or something like that, right? Is like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to go back to that space. But what I realized for myself was there was an entanglement and a link in to those higher states of consciousness with the comfortability of not being in this world and taking full action and responsibility. So, as somebody who has that background of being really connected to the degree of, oh, I'm good being off planet and I don't want to take any responsibility. I love being in my mystical experience, but you're really disassociating. It's a disassociation of epic proportions. So again, it's like,
It's
where
an
are you
escape
at?
too.
It's an
It's an
escape.
escape too.
Yeah. So where are you at? And what do you feel your highest reality is? And for me, it's the brain awakened, the heart awakened, where you're coming from love and consciousness, but you're also taking right action and you're in the world as well as having a connector point to whatever higher dimensional realities or consciousness or evolution or God, whatever you want to call it, but also being radically in the world and being radically have the ability to get stuff done with your neighbors and be normal too. So
Yeah.
that's what I've been playing with lately is stretching myself, but making sure that I'm very, very grounded and approachable and accessible in the real world while I still keep my link in to the higher levels of consciousness and those abstractions. And that's hard. And sometimes, knowing when to be where with whom and, trying to, because it seems to me that I've realized that we kind of always feel like we want to be that the opposite or the inversion is right.
Hmm.
I've realized that. And I'm like,
Well,
no,
that's a
actually,
polarity. That's
yeah,
that
the
polarity.
polarity is right. But
Right.
actually, I've realized the polarity isn't right. Actually, it's a part of potentially the process, but like it doesn't have to be. And you got to be real careful when you polarize because you might think, oh, now I found my, this is my alchemical gold. And now I've labeled it and I've concretized it. And actually, it's a trap, but I don't see it.
You better believe it. Good point, man. It's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
It's like, and not only that, but I've seen people that just get obsessed with this stuff, and I think that it is an overusage, and
Mm-hmm.
and just like you said, it is an imbalance
Mm-hmm.
approach. Like all this stuff is just like we say integration. Like all these are just tools and ways that you can further integrate yourself, but once you get locked in, you're
Mm-hmm.
locked in somebody else's camp too. And not only that, but I do the research, and there's a big camp against Joe
Oh
Dispenza,
yeah, I've
and,
gone down that rabbit
and
hole
especially
too.
with medical researchers that value scientific reproduction, and where is this quantum, and how can we like see it, or how can we measure it, how can, or even though there is no measurement, it is all around us. And I do believe that too, like we do exist in a universe where there's space all around us, but there
Mm-hmm.
is ways that we can time with precision of a split second, like landing our asteroid on a comet to blow it up out of orbit. Like
Mm-hmm.
there is science, and that is reliable and repeatable, and
Mm-hmm.
like this just isn't in that arena, and I got to
Mm-hmm.
question why that is, right?
Yeah,
And so
right.
there is a critical eye that we have to, and that's the beauty of like evaluating truth. And it's like, look, man, like if I was emotionally invested 100% and with Dr. Joe as who he is, like I would lose myself too. Like this
Yeah.
that would be part
Right.
of the
Yeah.
process of really really looking at which is. But I also know that I've had some good experiences with what he's done.
Hmm.
But I too, the thing is that it's a tool to get you
It's a tool.
to
Yeah.
learn it on your own, in
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
music, anything. And if I need to get into that space, I just know that it's there. And
Hmm.
it's more about like a contemplation, or like just to sit and to be present, right? And that's
Hmm.
the other aspect of like, dude,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
alive right now. I'm in a body. I'm talking to Stephanie. Like it's cool.
Hmm.
Like we have things to be thankful for in this moment.
Hmm.
And I think that that also kind of highlights that and kind of clears clutter
It
sometimes.
helps
But
to keep the balance, right?
yeah,
Because
it's a
again, it's
good
so
tool,
easy
man.
to go too far in any direction, even if it's a good direction. At some
And
point, excess is just not balance.
I remember being at his place and somebody was like, "This is my 21st event," and I was just like, "Ooh, like this is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a little bit
It's
too like
addicted.
right."
It's
Or it's like
another
that,
addiction.
right? And that's it is like an overusage, like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like
The
overusage
consumption.
of yeah, exactly, overusage of sugar, overusage
Same thing.
of
And
opiates, overusage of meditation.
that's right. And you know what? I actually used that analogy back when I closed my last yoga studio. This was like 6 years ago. Is I had a feeling within myself that I have to close my yoga studios and I wasn't going to be a teacher anymore. And I had a meeting with my teachers and I said, I'm going to take a little sabbatical. I'm going to take some time off because I don't know if I'm going to teach anymore. And they were like, what do you mean you're not going to teach? Like, these are your businesses. You're an amazing instructor. Why would you not teach? And I said, I don't know, let me investigate, but I'm feeling something within myself and I want to be true to that. And first of all, I accepted that honesty, even though it might not have looked good. I could have faced kickback. Like I honored my truth that was coming forth. And I said, I'm taking time off. I don't know that I want to teach anymore. Even though everybody's like, what are you doing? I still honored my truth. And with that honoring of my truth, I pretty quickly started to distill what it was that I was actually feeling, because I said, I don't know right now, but give me a little time. I will figure this out. And that's exactly what I realized. I was shown like somebody who, is addicted to heroin or
Mm,
drugs in that form of escapism from pain and trying to find that self soothing, trying to keep that soul alive by soothing somehow. And I saw me over here doing yoga every day, teaching. And I was like, okay, I'm not seeing the correlation here really. Like, yoga is healthy and it's good for you. And that's exactly the vision that I had is it might not be as dangerous as a heroin addiction, but you're disassociating from the next step that you have to take in your life. This has to change. And you're using this as a means to be comfortable and have a business and get money and help people, but you're not growing anymore in this. You're stuck here, actually. You can't evolve anymore within your soul's experience unless you stop doing this. And when I stopped doing it was when all of the shadow work came forth, because I
mm,
was in love and light land forever. And I had more work to do. And the Great Spirit was calling me, you got to do more work. And when I started to realize that shadow coming up and this darkness was coming up, oh, I didn't like it. And I said, can I go back? I want to go back there.
what's
And
familiar?
it was like, no, you chose it, you were ready to evolve. And this is what you need to see. And I had many years of profound shadow work, of darkness, integrating darkness and shadow within myself. But I was able to do it. And wow, completely, that started my individuation integration process. But I had to step away from my comfort zone. I had to step away. I had to lose. I had to sacrifice something. And I think that nowadays we talk about this a lot within, the Mark Passio community, is like the level of compliance and comfortability that we get stuck in. And we try to justify it and we rationalize all in these weird, distorted ways to stay in something when we know we need to go or grow. And I needed to grow, which meant I had to go, which meant I had to be losing something that offered me stability at a really horrible time in my life, because I was about to get my second kidney transplant and go on dialysis. So I was like, okay, I could die. I was separating from my spouse at the time. I was losing my yoga studio businesses. And I was like, okay, tower moment. Here we go. This is going to be fun. I might not even live through this. Like, literally, I had a vision of myself homeless on the corner in my neighborhood, like going to dialysis. And I was like, oh shit, I don't think it could get much worse than that. Like, that would be god awful. But you know what? None of those things happened. But I leaned in, like you said. I leaned in. I'm like, oh, here we go. This is going to be a journey and it ain't going to be pretty. And it wasn't. But I had one or two people in my life who said, Stephanie, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Like, this looks crazy. You look like you've lost your mind. But I trust you. I know you as a person. And I was like, you're a real friend. And you might be the only real friend that I've ever had. And I couldn't see it. I couldn't see that I've surrounded myself with my wounds in physical form. Mm-hmm. And I changed so much, but thank God, because I was dying. I was dying. My soul was dying. Like you said, I was dying.
Yeah,
and I was like, do you want to,
within you?
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't make sense, but I can't continue this. Like, I can't, like, there's just no way. Like, I can't breathe. I can't move. It's like, I get stuck in mud or something. I don't know how to explain it. But, well, I do. It's a stagnation. I mean, what happens when a pond gets stagnant, right? And it
Stinky little pond.
Putrid, and the viscosity goes way down, and they've got mud that will choke out and kill. And
lots grows in those environments, and it's never good.
And then when we clear it out, of course, there's going to be some shadow, that is going to be all that muck and shit that's flying out of you. But guess what comes next?
Purification.
Purification, and the real like cradle of life, the real like inviting of a magical experience almost, right? And but while we do it, it feels like we're freaking having pond scum all over it. No.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a simple and basic analogy that's accessible for anybody. It's like, you've let your pond go forever. It's gonna take a little while to clean that shit out.
Yeah, you're comfortable. There's overgrowth. There's
yeah. I even like how it looks now. Look at it. It looks pretty, right? I like the wildness.
Right. But it's on. But as far as ecologically, it's about ready to become, unsustainable, and not only that, but
invasive, unsustainable.
That's right. Invasive,
not healthy, not life-giving. And once you start cleaning it out regularly, it
stinks at first. Right.
Yeah.
It really stinks at first. When you make that decision to clean it out, it freaking stinks almost unbearably. But do you know what? That stink
also, it's death. It's putrid.
But that stink death also benefits around all those around you. And that's the other thing that you have to know, is like, if this is fertilizer for others to see you clean this, or to utilize the stink that you have. And I think that is almost like energetic fertilizer. When you realize this and you start to clear this shit out. And another way that I do it too is, like, I imagine myself when I'm showering, like in a really, really, like a creek that has been overgrown with moss, and just like really all these rocks are just like really furry, I guess. And then my shower.
Bill, are you telling us about your shower experience?
My furry body.
This bonus for everybody.
Yeah, totally. I'll put some pictures in the. No, just kidding.
Bill's gonna
my
take
only
a shower
fans
later.
will be
with his eucalyptus and his furry rocks.
But I imagine like this water coming through and just clearing out and and just like all these rocks just like getting pristine, and just like clearing out all the junk and just washing it away. And it's not junk, it's like living matter, whatever that accumulated. But I clean myself physically and energetically as well, and just kind of let that stuff go, and be neutralize and let it process in the metaphysical world where it needs to be, and just not. And sometimes it's like, dude, I just can't put my finger on it. Just like we were saying earlier, I don't know what I'm feeling. Right? It's like this thing that's that needs to be uncovered. And
Yeah. I love
it's
that. There is a profound symbolic relationship between emotional purging, cleansing, mental purging, cleansing, and water. Like there's it is the purification
bonding
aspect,
water.
right? Of the elements. It's beautiful. I do that too. When I'm in the shower, I'm like, I'm envisioning. Now I'm going in the shower.
Yeah, totally. Her
I'm
only fans will be
envisioning,
no.
I'm just envisioning like this purification process and the water. I mean, think if
Yeah.
we're mostly water,
Yeah. Wear
there's a
water
lot held
suits.
within the water, within our tissues, within our lymphatic system, a lot of garbage. So it's that resonance of like, yes, it's outside of me, but I can feel that. I'm so connected to that. We're all so much more connected. Just this flesh suit doesn't, I mean, it creates a barrier, but it doesn't create I mean, there's still so much permeability that I think we don't see. I
Yeah.
mean, I know energetically, I'm very in tune with that field, quantum field aspect of things, and there is things such as telepathy and connection and energetic resonance. Like it definitely is there if you are clear enough to pick up on that frequency.
Absolutely. Well, no, what was I just gonna say? I mean, Masari Moto talks about the
Yeah.
molecules of water, and he has a lot of holes in that program too. Like there's some things that aren't being able to be reproduced, but
Mm-hmm.
and Peter Levine talks about and we'll go back to the trauma work that we were talking about. Like the shower is also a good time to get back into your body, and a lot of times when we're experiencing trauma, we actually are out of our body.
Right. Totally.
We don't
Right.
realize it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And when
when
you're
you're
doing
in that
trauma work, you
shower,
need to make sure that you're coming back and grounding yourself as well.
that's right. And your body keeps score because, and sometimes there's going to be some shit when you get back in your body that's going to be very uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
pay attention to it. And that's part of the work and part of the process. And if you need it, well, I definitely recommend working with a professional anyway, but
Mm-hmm.
that would be the time for the professional. But an exercise that they talk about in healing trauma in the book is like start with your hands and feel the water and know that
Mm-hmm.
and say this is my body, this is my
Mm-hmm.
hand, these are my hands, and let that
Yeah.
water and feel it and become present. Let this be an exercise of becoming present in the moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that's
Mm-hmm.
another aspect of I think the shower is a very powerful place, and I've actually had like little intuitive messages and stuff in the shower sometimes, so pay attention to those. Like
Yeah.
I think that there's messages in the water or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Not to sound all hippy dippy like we haven't already, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sometimes you might have an idea or something show up in the shower, and write it down, man,
Yeah.
and see if that
Yeah.
might be something. If that didn't work for you, here's another approach. Or if that didn't
Exactly.
work for you, or if that wasn't your cup of tea, here's another way that you can go, right?
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. The variety is the spice of life, and we're figuring out there's so many ways to, there's not just one way to get up to that summit, man. Just like I was saying,
It's
there's
true.
trams, there's even helicopters, man. There's
Yeah.
planes, there's I mean, there's motorcycles, there's the ways that we can help with technological advancements to us to get there quicker and safer.
Yeah.
And once we're there, guess what? We're gonna go somewhere else, and I can't wait for that. Like it's
Yeah.
and that's where I think that's why we're here, man. I think
Keep
that's why we're
growing, keep
alive,
evolving, keep popping bubbles. Be aware if you're staying someplace too long. Is we tried, but we forgot to get to know ourselves first.
Yeah.
And now it's time to wipe the slate clean so we can do it right. Let's go
Well,
back to the garden and do it right consciously.
well, and and just like the garden, well, and speaking of men too, like I want us to become warriors again,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
there's an aspect of this that is valuable as far as like being like rolling around with each other and as a steam vent, like learning fight and all
Mm-hmm.
that
Like
stuff.
rites of passage. Like, well, think
Yeah, oh
about it. Our
yeah,
culture has had no initiation, rites of
yeah.
passage. Other cultures have. They're a little more advanced in a lot of ways, where we're overdeveloped in some ways. Other cultures that don't have near the technology or resource we do, but they're more unified as an individual and in their clan and in their group and within their tribe.
Well, they understand the importance, and warrior and the gardener, or the warrior in the garden. We don't want a gardener in the war.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We
yeah.
want somebody that has the capabilities, but maybe never use them because we understand the value of
Right.
being
Okay. I
at
see what you're
peace,
saying. Yeah. Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Instead of somebody who's thrust into a situation that really has no idea how to
Hmm.
respond to it, and it's
Yeah.
going to lead to their demise.
Is that we're in the shadowlands right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I think that there is a clarion call for us all to do this inner work so we can become more strong, because it's just not an easy time to be alive I mean, it's just a difficult time culturally, societally, in our world. So we have to get stronger. I don't see it getting any easier anytime soon. So it's like you have to do the work. It's time to get stronger. And at the same time, capitalism, consumerism, all of the everything is trying to just keep us further and further and further disconnected from ourselves and that potential. So it's you got to fight that entropy.
Just like
You
when we
have
were
to.
talking on when I was speaking on Mark's show about bringing community together,
Yeah.
and it's important, but just like you were saying, there's we can only do the work on ourselves, but I think that you know doing the work and showing it as we show up further, we're going to advance the cause
Yeah.
as the more that
Yeah.
we understand and the more
Yeah.
that we evolve.
Absolutely. I mean, I love everything Mark has done with the One Great Work Network. Um, but like you said, I think it's now time that we got to get together. We got to literally be like, all right, we're going to gather these people and we're going to build it. We're going to build a school. We're going to build a conscious educational program. We're going to build it in the real world now. So I think there is an element of the digital marketplace and to get our word out, but we got to still have the people who are building in the communities too.
Yeah.
And
The
I think
people
we're
that
ready for that.
understand the value of what we want to do, and it's basically a school of natural law. It's just
Yeah.
it's showing people the way that the world works,
I
and
know
my
you know
favorite
this one
quote
too.
is secrecy is the enemy of healing.
Oh, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete.
Buckminster Fuller.
Yeah. Beautiful. Right? So let's do it. Let's build some shit.
That's right. And he also says we don't put our energy into fighting the old paradigm. We put 100% of our energy into building a new one.
Yeah, that's kind of the same thing.
He's like, don't waste your time with that crap. That's just time and wasting. So when you
Yeah. And
see these people
yeah.
getting crazy about the AI and stuff like that, I'm like, Buckminster Fuller said, yeah.
Yeah, use it for wield the power for good. And, I understand the righteous anger as a means to cultivate some motivation and drive and ambition. It has an energy to it. And it's necessary at times. But I think if we could now culminate this desire and instead of talking about whatever it is we're talking about that we're angry at, just stop it and just go find the right people and start working on the new thing. It's come out of that like liminal space of like talking and sharing and complaining about this or that, and let's just go do the thing now. That's my
Well, I
hope.
think
I'm
that,
trying to do.
we start by visualizing what it would be like to have that thing here, right? And
Hmm.
start
Hmm.
as within, so without, right?
Hmm.
Hermetic principles,
Hmm.
and to start visualize and the benefit of how many people this will help, and how and what ways it will help them, and how it will help us,
Yeah.
and then feel that gratitude of receiving that help, and then
Yeah.
also feel the gratitude of giving the help to others, right? And let it be, just this thing that happens, and now that we've kind of set the intention for it, it is like a little form of, or a little bit of what's possible, right? We just
Yeah.
just like Buckminster Fuller says, is the paradigm of the new is where we're interested in going,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we wish those dinosaurs, a good death, but
Hmm.
a death nonetheless.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I do. I mean, death and life are just part of the same coin, man. It's just the other side of it, and we
That's right.
belong to a very death phobic culture, and that's a totally different conversation, but one
Yeah,
that
Ernest
I'm down to
Becker,
have.
the denial of death, the death anxiety theory. And I see that. I participated in that, but that's another thing when you commit to doing this inner work, your relationship with death matures a lot, and
Yeah.
it's different. You
And if
fear more not living fully.
let somebody come, they can have my earthly body. If I'm speaking the truth, I don't think that there's anything else I would love to lay my earthly body on the line for than truth, love, and freedom. And
Hmm.
as I grow older, we are all going to die. And,
Hmm.
it's just that some of us really don't live. And
That's
that's what
right.
I want
That's
to
right.
do, is make a point to live my life and to truly live my life.
Thank you,
And
Bill. Thank you for consciously choosing that journey. And as a woman and a friend, I'm excited when I get to spend time with people like you. And I appreciate your dedication to the process because I know it's hell at times, but it gives me hope and it makes me feel excited to create as a woman, knowing that they're going to be, as you said, what is it? Bulls, not cows. And
cows and
way
buffaloes.
back several hours ago when we were talking, and
Mhm.
also the warrior in the garden. Like it makes me as a woman feel like, yes, this is, I want to create so much in that space.
Yeah, and know that you're safe, and
Mm-hmm.
know that we're all safe,
Mm-hmm.
and if we need to go to the dark where we do invoke force,
Mm-hmm.
we're
That we
perfectly
will.
fine going there. We're
Exactly.
perfectly fine going there.
Exactly.
And
It
we
seems to
have
me like a mature.
experience there, and but we don't want to, but we can,
Exactly.
and we'll do
Perfectly said.
whatever it takes to stay out of that arena.
Mm-hmm.
But with using the calm stoic methods
Mm-hmm.
of keeping ourselves calm, but
Mm-hmm. But prepared if necessary.
and not only that, but just calm doesn't mean discarding others. Calm
Mm-hmm.
means considering others. Calm means, and even if it means an extreme situation, that's even more valuable to remain calm in an emergency or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it takes practice, and it takes a reminder. And where is my book? I'm sure I have it around here somewhere, my meditations book. But yeah, there's Marcus Aurelius Meditations that I read from often. I can't find it, but it's
Right in front of
underneath
you.
my Christmas cards that I gotta sign here. And then here we can
Nice.
even, like, I'll open it up as a man, and this is what I recommend, just having this as men, and I know women too, but they can find value out of it. But let's see here. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over, it stands unmoved in the raging of the sea, falls still around it.
That's nice. I'm going to say something wildly inappropriate after that beautiful. Do you remember Jack Handy on Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
It's like
Oh yeah.
poems with Jack Handy. Like when
My
you were doing that, I was like, oh man, I'd love to sit in on like the masculine poetry hour. I'd love to be there
but
for that.
every like, it just reminds you, man, be like this.
Yeah.
Be this. Let life fall still here. Let don't don't let the chaos dictate your actions.
Don't lose yourself
You
in that chaos.
Yeah, you do lose yourself in
Don't
that.
sacrifice your soul.
Find yourself in the chaos. Don't lose yourself in the chaos. And that's a perfect opportunity to lose yourself, and that's the easy route. But to
Yeah.
stay calm and
Because you'll
stay
find a
focused.
million ways to justify the easy way out. A million. And a
And it
whole
feels
crowd
good,
to
man.
support you.
It feels good, and people will commend you for doing that. And guess what? People will call you heartless and other things for staying calm.
Yeah.
And but usually, once the progression of life is unfolded to a point where you can actually look back at the lessons, that's when the value of being calm, and that's where every time I have these meditations or journaling, that's what always remains, is a calm, confident gentleman. And that's
That's
who
so
I am in
nice.
my core, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I am
Mm-hmm.
calm, and just like the calming that
Did you
rock
say
that
the calm, confident gentleman? You got to write a book.
okay,
Be nice.
the calm,
Bill, thank you for
confident
talking
gentleman.
to me today.
Thank you for
Will you come
asking
back and
me.
have another chat with me sometime?
Anytime.
Great,
You
because
know
I'd
that.
I'd like to talk about relationships and animals because that's we didn't even really get to talk about
Do you
your
know that?
job.
Do you know that I enjoy talking with you and I would come back anytime?
Oh,
You just
thanks,
have to
Bill.
ask.
Thank you. Well, we're probably
Okay.
going to talk off camera anyhow, so
Totally.
but
Totally.
we're just trying to trick the audience. All right. Well, thanks, Bill. All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. Let's talk soon. Let's keep this conversation going.
Yes, my pleasure.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
thank you for doing what you do, Steph.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.